In this week's episode, we sit down with Leah Jacobson from the Guiding Star Project to discuss their latest book project, A Happy Girl's Guide to Being Whole. But more than that, we discuss what is women's healthcare? What does it look like? How do we better support women in today's day and age? So all that and more coming up next. Hi, Leah. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
For all of our viewers, this is Leah Jacobson. She's the CEO and founder of the Guiding Star Project, which is a national provider for women's healthcare. And she's also the author of Wholistic Feminism, Healing the Identity Crisis Caused by the Women's Movement. And today we're especially going to dive into a book she edited and contributed on called The Happy Girl's Guide to Being Whole. And so I'm just really looking forward to this conversation, especially in light of the need in women's healthcare. And so, Leah, if you can just kind of give us a little bit of introduction of what you are doing and where you see that meeting maybe some of the biggest needs in women's healthcare today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Katie, for having me on today. I think we're just at such a monumental moment historically in the life of the church and in the pro-life movement. You know, this exact moment in time is such a tremendous opportunity for us to really help women, you know, to find wholeness, to find what's actually going to give us lives that are fulfilling. And a big piece of that has always been the role of women's healthcare. And so I think at this exact moment in time, you know, there's a lot of questions out there right now about, you know, is abortion healthcare? Is this what women need to be happy and to be healthy? And, you know, a lot of people saying abortion's not healthcare, like it's not even remotely healthy. And so to me, really, this moment is just monumental. It's a chance for us to define what helps women live healthy, fulfilled lives that are whole, what helps us to truly know and understand ourselves.
Yeah. And what for just our viewers' background, is the Guiding Star Project and maybe how that's meeting some of the needs that you're seeing right now?
Yeah, so Guiding Star Project, it's a national 501c3 organization, and it opens up women's healthcare centers. And by healthcare, what we define, you know, healthcare for women is true knowledge, true understanding, and true support for our unique feminine abilities. Like, what do women's bodies do uniquely that men's don't do? What are the differences between men and women? And can we understand, embrace, and really educate women on those unique functions of their bodies? And at Guiding Star, we define it very simply. Women, we ovulate, we gestate, and we lactate. And so the three kind of physical core functions of our centers providing healthcare focus on natural fertility awareness, childbirth and prenatal care, and then breastfeeding and postpartum support. And then we've added a fourth core service that every one of our centers provides, which is Child Watch and family resources. So material goods for moms to, you know, really just have that support as a mother in our culture. So Guiding Star Centers, those four core pillars of service to all women, is really trying to reshape and redefine what truly should be considered women's health care. Yeah.
Oh, what a beautiful gift. What a awareness that childcare and like supplying for the needs of the mother, in addition to the education part, in addition to just providing that medical service. And I think that far too often we compartmentalize that. And I know that I've had OBs that don't let me bring my kids in. And it's hard when I'm currently expecting my fourth in 36 weeks, but I have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old, the like juggling act of that. And so that's incredible. So thank you for providing that service.
Well, I remember being almost exactly where you're at, not that terribly long ago. I'm actually expecting baby number 8 right now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. But a lot of what Guiding Star has become, you know, came out of my experiences as a woman trying to access healthcare. trying to, exactly like you just said, bring toddlers along to prenatal appointments and getting the stink eye from the nurse and side comments from people about, don't you know how that happens? And just really things that made me feel, it was degrading. It made me feel very small, and it made me feel as if health professionals thought that I was, incompetent, or that they knew what was best for me and that I should know better. And a little bit of, my own kind of wounding through the healthcare system is what has shaped Guiding Star, because we really need to stop traumatizing women. We need women to feel supported and seen and understood, and not inflict so much shame.
Yeah. That's a beautiful reflection. Having my fourth, it's been a like huge lie that I've been attacking, that I could ask for more help when I had one or two, but it's kind of my fault that I chose to have three or four. And so at this point, you must like it. So like you must not need help. And that like core lie being fed into us and fighting against that. And what a beautiful gift that you can say, like, no, you are doing something that is beautiful and a superpower as a woman
Yeah.
to grow a child. I also, in kind of my upbringing, had no awareness of my fertility starting off. And so, kind of your first core service, and really where the Happy Girl's Guide to Being Whole stems in providing a resource, I think, is this idea of learning how our bodies naturally work. And so when I started my period at 12, it was, here's contraception because it hurts and it's painful. And okay, but like this Band-Aid didn't actually tell me anything about how my body worked, or why was it painful? Why
Yeah.
were these symptoms so hard that I supposedly couldn't handle it?
Yeah.
And where do you see learning and understanding our bodies as a way to actually empower women?
I mean, I think it's the essential prerequisite to anything with, it's human identity. It's, we are our body, but yet we create such a dissociation with our own fertility. We fear it, we run from it, we suppress it, we destroy it. And you really can't know who you are if you don't know the body that is you, because we are our bodies, incarnate beings. Like, we exist within this body for a reason. God doesn't create by mistake. We have the body we have for a purpose and a reason. And until we accept that body, it's almost impossible to fulfill or find that purpose of our life. And so body literacy, is so much more than just charting your cycle, so much more than just, identifying the day you can ovulate. It's really placing yourself in the grand cosmic scheme of creation. What do I have to bring to the world? How do I express my uniqueness? I have a feminine genius because I have a female body. And there's so much that has just been robbed from our daughters, in understanding themselves and understanding what's going to give their life meaning and purpose and wholeness, because we neglect to tell them the basics of their body.
Oh, yes. Yes. And
So much,
like
so much there.
how so much there. I think the reality that this is so much more than just charting. And I think we're also introduced to charting specifically to achieve or delay pregnancy, and not like the holistic health element, but the reality that we have a purpose. And in a culture that is striving to figure out what that is, but yet suppressing exactly where God is telling us it is and leading us to, and that feminine genius. And how much I needed to hear that I was created with a purpose, and how
Yeah.
much women need to hear that they're not a lesser than. We are different, but we have a dignity and equality that is not manifested through being the same, but manifested through discovering that. And thank you. Thank you for sharing that message
Well,
through your nonprofit.
and really, Katie, I think like what you shared about just being 12 years old and, being put on contraception, it was, really it's this indicative of this entire healthcare system that
Mhm.
thinks it's okay to really control women, to control outcomes, to control the natural body, because we somehow know
Mhm.
better. And so we see it
Yeah.
in our fertility practices, we see it in our childbirth practices, we see it in
Yeah.
our breastfeeding, like all areas of women's healthcare have
Mhm.
really adopted this false narrative that we know better than nature, that we know better and that we can fix it and it's up to us to, do it
Mhm.
ourselves. And it's a very hurtful. I mean, it goes back, since it's a Catholic program. This is the sin of the garden. This is the
Yeah.
original fall that we, have the power to take within
Mhm.
our grasp, godlike ability, and that it will be better if we do. And we fell
Oh.
for it at the beginning, and we continue to fall for it every single
Mhm.
day. Um, Specifically in our doctor's offices, though, we see a lot of this happening.
Mm. That's such a good point that we all come from that fallen tree and the reality that we have this tendency within us. And we see it from even the very beginning of I want to control and I want to grasp, and I also don't trust. And I think even for women right now that are maybe already charting, maybe already you're like years into having kids, but maybe you're a little tired. And go, okay, Leora, like, how long am I supposed to do this? And how many kids? And, and then there's that desire to go, well, I can just end this part of
Yeah,
me.
that's a
Um,
very real temptation, I think. Yeah, I'm at that kind of
yeah.
part of my life with my friend group, and you do see that, like, oh, I've been faithful for the majority of our our marriage, the
Mhm.
majority of it. I think it's time to be
Mhm.
done. It's a
Yeah.
long race we run. It's a long race.
Mhm. Ah, and that reality that there may be an unexpected child in there that is a gift. But in the course of the years of our fertility, coming to that place of trust, um, yeah, is such an important. And so, for anyone who's listening who is scared of natural family planning, it is very effective, but it is also us opening ourselves up to the Lord's will. And with that, I think just to speak to the woman that maybe is in that unexpected pregnancy of just that child inside of you has a purpose and a life, and that sperm and that egg could have never existed at a separate or different time. And what a amazing gift that child will be.
Amen.
The we'll go back to the idea of just I I want to talk a little bit about this book and this resource, The Happy Girl's Guide to Being Whole. And its subtitle is What You Never Knew About Your Natural Body. And so, what do you see as this resource? Where do you see it helping
I
women
have it
today?
sitting right in front of me right now.
Nice.
um, this resource, I really felt strongly about. Guiding Star published this book under our press, Lumen Press, and so we've published my book and we've published this book. And I felt like this was the necessary follow up, because my book, Holistic Feminism, focused a lot on the context of the women's movement
Mhm.
and why women's healthcare has become the way it is, and why women have demanded,
Mhm.
suppression and alteration of our fertility and our pregnancies, and why we felt that pressure to pursue career over family. Now this book, I feel like, is the necessary follow-up, because it's what the last two generations of women have missed in terms of education from doctors and from their mothers on what a normal female body does when it's healthy. We
Mhm.
no longer have that information um, readily available to us. Our mothers no longer have this information. No one taught
Mhm.
them. And so it's
Yeah.
a beautiful, we did it's like a full color, we tried to make it very, just beautiful and easy for any young woman to pick up and read through it. But it's removing the mystery around
Mhm.
hormones and around just the weird things that our bodies do. It
Yeah.
really just addresses it. This is what cervical mucus looks like. This is healthy. This is
Mhm.
not healthy. This is a problem. This is not a problem. It gives us
Yeah.
guidelines, because it's very confusing out there right now. Young women don't know how to read their bodies because they haven't been taught to pay attention to them. And so this is kind of that decoder of, this is what you see, this is what it means.
Yeah. Oh, and what a necessary resource when, depending on the health education that you're receiving, may or may not explore any of that. And I think the reality that I didn't know how my body worked. And so not only was I on the pill, I was on Seasonique, which put me on 4 periods a year. So I like really didn't have any awareness of what was a functioning
Yeah.
cycle and if my cycle was functioning, if that
Yeah.
was healthy. And it is interesting because in the book, one of the things that most stood out to me, it was like the fun fact was that the first year of your period, and also when you come off of any type of hormonal birth control, it will be a very painful first year potentially.
Mhm.
And that can be an indicator of an underlying concern that we need to look at, but it can also just be naturally as your body takes on this new role. And I think that was like, oh, I had such a fear coming off contraception when the reality is that I hadn't let my body do this for a year to actually know what it was going to feel like long term.
Yeah.
And so often I hear that from women like, no, Katie, like I can't work or function when I have a period. And I'm like, okay, but have we tried it for a year even? And that like was like a huge light bulb for me. It was just one of the many facts in this book.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a lot of simple facts, things like, as we were writing it, or as we were working at it, and Teresa put one of the facts, and I was like, no, that, and I've grown up, I've never been on contraception, I've never used birth control, yet I was learning stuff as we were doing it. And the one that stuck out to me was that research has actually proven that taking ibuprofen during your period actually lessens the amount of blood, that you actually bleed less because of the inflammation effect on the endometrial lining, you bleed less. And that to me was like, oh, no wonder why ibuprofen makes your period feel so much better. It actually has like a medical function. So there's a lot of good information in there, even for
Yeah.
me, who've been cycling, for almost 30 years, I was learning as well.
It was a very interesting book, and just it broke down female anatomy and male anatomy and kind of just walked you through all of these concepts. And I think today, as we'll touch on the end of Roe versus Wade, I understand the fear.
Yeah.
I understand the fear in a culture that is told there's like 2 expectations. The reality is that before my conversion, sexual activity was a part of my life, and that like expectation for promiscuity and the expectation for high achievements
Hmm.
were so hand in hand. And so how could you do both without these backup plans? And so I think some of that though is the fear of I don't know how my body works, but I
Hmm.
also haven't put much worth in it. And that process. And so I think for you, when you were starting Guiding Star, what were you seeing and what do you see today in the women that are coming from this place of unknown or fear?
I think what I've seen, and the reason Guiding Star really, I think, kind of came to be was the work that I had done in campus ministry, working with college age women. And I was a young woman, a young mom, having my first babies. And it was the conversations as I was talking with women, just, their fear and their disassociation with their bodies and their natural bodies, and just kind of a presumption of that their body somehow was going to fail them or it didn't work properly. Like there was just this
Mhm.
deep-seated distrust of their natural body. And I saw that pretty clearly working on a college campus, and the questions I was getting and the conversations I was having as a young mother.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think that has been improved. That was 20 years
Mhm.
ago. And I think that if anything, we've had even a further disassociation from the purpose of our
Mhm.
natural bodies. And we've had even a further distancing from the purpose of us being born the way we are born. The rhetoric has been very much, you create your reality, you create who you are. Um,
Mhm.
and you don't necessarily take note of the biological reality in front of you. And so I think at this moment in time, like, it is absolutely critical that we very firmly establish guideposts based upon the physical and biological reality of the human person, of the male body, of the female body, to set standards for health. Because if health is no longer anchored in a physical being, what does health mean? You know?
And what is true health care then that helps us become whole and happy and to understand our bodies? And I think that is, this book doesn't come from a faith viewpoint as much as like a medical viewpoint. And I think that's a great resource for women, especially that are maybe like reaching out towards this, but like still want the science behind it. And I think that this is such a beautiful gift. And you guys did do a great job on making it easy to read and engaging. And my husband and I both flew through it. And I started and was like, oh, like, I'm not going to learn anything. We like have taught natural family planning. And then, as I said, like, there were so many tidbits, as you pointed out, in just how much we don't know in this topic, how much we are not taught. And so thank you. Thank you for contributing to this, to editing it, to publishing it, to the whole 9 yards.
You're welcome. It's been one of those projects where you're like, I'm just so glad I got to be part of that, because it is filling a huge need in the market. There's really nothing else out there that approaches it with this same kind of worldview. Because it's not saying just slap a condom on it and it'll all be fine. Like, it's not saying that. It's saying, that also is not necessarily getting to the heart of our issue here, which is that we don't trust women to understand their bodies. Like, we're not giving them the education. And then we have this sort of like paternalism of, well, we know what's best for you, so we're going to take care of that. And our girls, we need to give them the confidence, we need to give that sort of like, we believe that you are smart enough. We believe that you can, be the authority of your own body and your own future.
And that you can understand how your body's supposed to work and use this as a resource to identify where things might not be as healthy. And then what can we do that isn't just slap the Band-Aid? Because I truly believe that most doctors come to women's healthcare, whether it's from the contraception or from labor and delivery, out of a place of genuinely wanting to care for women. But what has been taught and the resources that have been given, it's not malicious, but it's so poorly formed. And so I remember having an ovarian cyst, and somebody, the ER doc, looking at me because I thought it was maybe appendicitis. Long story short, but they were like, oh, this is because you're not on birth control. And I was like, that would solve this? But like, no, like, that's not the actual underlying health issue. That's the Band-Aid that may suppress this issue. So I don't even know something's wrong. But again and again, they're not looking at me going, let's put a Band-Aid on it. They're looking at it and going, well, that would solve that problem. That's over. And
that's the reality, is we've reset the norm for women's health to an artificial line. Like, the norm that, a cycle is 28 days or whatever. I mean, really, that's based upon how many pills are in the pack. We've completely created this false expectation for women's health and women's cycles that's artificial. And so, you coming in not the norm, because you're not artificial, you're natural. That's a variable that, we just haven't taken the time. There hasn't been the incentive in women's healthcare to invest time into research and understanding these things, because the incentive, I hate to say it, there's a bit of big pharmaceutical here. There's a bit of, corporate America here. There's a bit of, there are a lot of interests in women's fertility behaving in a predictable, controlled fashion. And when it's unsuppressed and uncontrolled, they're a lot harder to, to keep down. And as feministy as you want to be, like, this should be the issue of the feminist movement. Women should absolutely have true bodily autonomy with body literacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That is feminism, that is understanding the feminine genius, the way our bodies work. Yes.
Amen.
What makes us different is what makes us incredible. Uh, and I think with that, the book goes in and does explain labor and delivery, although it's designed to help young women. I think the earlier we start learning about the natural way to like maybe bring forth babies and recover from childbirth, the better equipped we are. And so I also want to talk to you about how you've seen this, and as a lactation consultant as well, where has the lack of body awareness or understanding
Mhm.
really rooted itself out in labor,
Yeah.
delivery, postpartum care?
That's a really great question. So I think what you're kind of getting at is that there's this dissociation and distrust that's being planted at a very young age, 12, 13 years
Yes.
old. This, I don't trust my body to do things right. And also kind of giving up
Mhm.
control of it to something else, a device, a pill, like
Mhm.
somebody else knows what's best for me. And we see
Yeah.
this really when women come into those childbearing years. And we
Mhm.
fail oftentimes to advocate for ourselves very well in the birthing process. There is a
Yeah.
distrust, like, well, I must not be doing it right. Something must not be going the
Mhm.
right way. And things are normed, within a certain period of time, you should be here in a certain period of whatever. And, it's a very controlled setting that
Mhm.
makes modern healthcare comfortable. Well, like I
Mhm.
was saying, like often women unsuppressed are not as predictable as we would like them to be. Um, but we've not been taught necessarily to
Yeah.
trust ourselves. We've not been taught to really lean in and, believe that my body was made for
Mhm.
this, believe that it will all go the way it should. Most of the time, the majority of the time,
Yeah.
95% of the time, you're not going to have a problem. Things like C-sections and artificial milk formula, those things are absolutely life-saving. And it's critical
Yeah.
that we have access to them for that
Mhm.
5 to 10% of the time when things don't go right. But that is an
Yes.
extraordinary means. That is an extraordinary measure, and it should not be the norm.
Mhm.
It should not be the rates we're seeing it at. And the fact that we are seeing such high rates of, artificial formula supplementation and,
Mhm.
augmentation of labor and delivery and C-sections, um, it shows that there is a trauma happening because that's not how it
Mhm.
naturally should work. Something is going wrong in the process. Women are either, losing faith in themselves and kind of stepping
Yeah.
back or not being given the support that they need to be successful. Um,
Mhm.
or in some sad cases as well, the choice is being taken away from them. Maybe it's an employer that refuses to accommodate their breastfeeding rights, or maybe it's a doctor that's
Yeah.
on a timeline and wants to get home by the end of the day and let's do that C-section. And oftentimes
Yeah.
women are feeling as if their choices are, their birth choice, their feeding choice, different
Mhm.
things are being taken from them. And we have to be very cognizant of the trauma and the internal um, dissociation that
Mhm.
causes women. That is absolutely the type of thing that drives women to make negative decisions next time around. That's the sort of situation
Mhm.
where you had a terrible experience, you're dealing with severe postpartum depression, and you get pregnant again. Well, what does your mind go to? I'm terrible at
Yeah.
this. I can't do this. I'm going to have an abortion. I'm not going to do this again. I'm going to
Yeah.
get sterilized. I'm going to get my tubes tied. Women's healthcare
Mhm.
traumas are creating a very negative, culture,
Mhm.
unfortunately.
Ah, yes. 100%. The first hospital I delivered in had an 85% C-section rate.
Oh my gosh.
And my yep, my birth felt like a fight. Like it was
Yeah.
this, no, like, can you just let her do her thing? Like, we don't automatically have to jump to C-section. Like, can we just, and it just felt like this continuous fight of literally my healthcare team not believing in me. And praise be to God for the friends, the books, the seeds he had planted in my heart, and the husband who stood beside me to advocate for the birth I wanted. I still classify that as a miracle that I walked out with a natural childbirth. But the reality that I was gifted this education,
Yeah.
without which there's no way that I would have left without a C-section,
Yeah.
because the amount of pressure on me to do that. And I also was active duty and like had a little bit of issues because I needed to take a physical fitness test very quickly.
Ah,
And so I like some of the stupid motivations that were in my head of like, you can't cut my stomach because like, no, like I have to
I have
use
to do
my abs here
sit-ups next
soon.
month.
You don't understand whether that's healthy or not really, but it was a motivation.
Yeah,
But I think just so much of feeling like no one in that room believed that I could do it.
yeah, yeah,
And that lie that's been planted into us from TV, from the culture, from just doctors. Again, I don't think that it's malice. They
mhm,
want an epidural so that they don't have to knock you out for the C-section, which is
yeah,
beautiful. Beautiful that they want to protect that step, but then if I have an epidural, then I can't feel my own contractions,
yeah,
and that naturally makes labor harder. And
yes,
if they're because we desire control, which we talked about from our lack of trust in the garden, the idea of inducing
yeah,
is so appealing because
oh,
then it's on this
totally,
controlled timeline and I
totally,
know when it's going to happen. And but the reality is I truly believe that if you're induced and you have man-made contractions, you need a man-made medicine to help override that. So then like
yeah,
the reality of how that spins and the results in labor and delivery, and it
yeah,
breaks my heart.
yeah,
Um
me too. Me too. Because so many
ah,
women are so broken by
yes.
this moment that should be
Mm,
absolutely defining of your power and your strength and your
mhm.
ability. You just created this little person and carried them through 9 months and successfully, grew them to a survivable
Mhm.
state. And your body's
Ah,
going to continue to provide for them for the next, year. I mean,
mhm,
it should be a crowning achievement of our
mhm.
feminine like gifting. And so many women just
Yeah,
leave the birth experience completely shattered. And we need to talk about that. We definitely
we
need to
do.
acknowledge that because it is damaging and
Mhm.
it's perpetuating a cycle of further dissociation and distrust in the natural body.
Yeah. And I love your use of the word trauma. And this reality that birth is such a intimate and vulnerable and exposed
Yeah,
experience, and the reality that there's a sexual element to it. It is the same parts of our body.
yeah,
And so when trauma exists there, when that occurs, the healing that is needed. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, I totally went that path, and that's exactly what my birth looked like, I am not saying that you were wrong, but that maybe there's some healing there that the Lord would like to invite you into. Because I think that far too often we're like, oh, well, most people have C-sections. It's not that big of a deal. Or most people have something go slightly wrong in their birth. It's like that's normal. And we belittle the experience that we had. And I think, no, like your body, you went through some trauma and that may hurt your next birth. And I think that that's an important element to just, especially if any of our listeners have experienced that, is to just say, like, that might be a place that you need some healing. And that's okay. And that's good.
mhm.
That will ultimately bring you closer to the Lord, I pray,
I
through that
totally,
process.
I totally had to go through that. It was, baby number 4 for me that kind of
Oh.
finally allowed me to put that back in place with the Lord of,
Mm,
do I trust that you made me good? Like I had
yeah.
been through difficult deliveries. And it was a moment of actually, I had an actual conversation in that pregnancy with God.
Mm,
Do I believe that you made me good?
mm,
And at that point, I was thinking, no, no, you totally screwed up. Like, I don't give birth well. I am not a good pregnant lady. I puke constantly. Like, everything is wrong. Um, and when I gave that over and just said, Lord, I trust that you knew what you were doing. I
mm,
trust that my body is not broken. I trust that, yes, I can do this. And changed everything in my faith and in my relationship with my own body and my motherhood.
mm.
It was a critical piece of healing that I didn't realize I needed that had to take place.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for that vulnerability. And praise be to God that you chose to have 4 kids, because if you had stopped at 2, you would have never had that conversation. But I think easily in our culture, you could have had those first 2 hard pregnancies and been like, ah, I'm done. And oh my goodness, you would have never had that breakthrough,
Yeah.
which you were already had you already found a guiding star by that fourth pregnancy?
Yeah, I did actually. So I found a guiding star right after my second baby. So I
Okay.
was pretty young. I think I was about 25 or 26 when this first
Yeah.
started to kind of get into motion. So it's been a long
Ah.
journey. I think I've had, this will be my, this is baby number 8. So this is 6 children since the founding of Guiding Star that have kind of come through this process with me. And every time I learn something new about ways that
Mhm.
women need more support, like because I experience it myself, or I hear it, or I see it in
Oh.
the experience of another woman. And even just being an older woman now, now being in my 40s and
Mhm.
being pregnant and experiencing it from this lens, there's so
Mhm.
many different attacks on my
Mhm.
abilities, and whether or not, like the lies coming at me now are different.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We are attacked in all ways as women when we embrace motherhood.
Mhm. The "You're too old."
Oh yeah.
I
I'm
You've
a
had too many,
I
like,
know, I know. What is my? I think I'm classified now as a
geriatric?
geriatric great grand multifarious.
Wow. That's some really great labels. That
It's
really
like I have
instills
a red flag in my
confidence.
chart. My chart is like a little red flag of like, watch out.
Watch out. And I again, does that bring confidence to women? Like, for some reason, the Lord is allowing you to have fertility at this point. So contrary to the, medical science, that isn't, I don't know, empowering? How
There's a lot of
belittling.
fear. They really try to
Yeah.
fear you after about 30, after 35. I noticed all my pregnancies after 35, there was a heightened level of more appointments, more testing that was recommended. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting how it shifts.
Already you have enough hormones and stuff going on. Let's add a little extra fear in there
I
to really
know.
boost your confidence and your strength as a woman. They're just a little scared. A little scared that you can still do this.
Mhm. Yeah.
Where are Guiding Star clinics actually located, or how do people get involved? What are some of the resources for our
Yeah,
viewers?
currently we have 7 locations across 5 states. 3 of them are in Iowa, one's in Minnesota, one in Florida, one in Tennessee, and one in Texas. And we are just
Mm.
opening a satellite location in Las Cruces, New Mexico. So we'll be going into a new state. But really, what our hope and our goal for Guiding Star is in the next several months is that we're really hoping in this kind of post Roe era to
Mhm.
see some really grand innovation from the pro life movement with potentially converting pregnancy centers into full medical women's healthcare clinics. We think there's an amazing opportunity at this moment in time of the infrastructure of roughly 3,000 brick and mortar centers in our country that have been doing great work for women for many years. And so we're really
Mhm.
invitationally, inviting
Mhm.
pregnancy centers that want to get into the women's health business, that are wanting to do fertility care and prenatal
Mhm.
care, medical services, breastfeeding, that they would consider contacting Guiding Star about, doing a conversion, because the time is now. The conversation
Ah.
is right now. What do women need for healthcare? And we're all hearing
Mhm.
it, that women are going to die if abortion goes away. Um, and if we could just
Yeah.
infuse these areas of the country with authentic, women's healthcare, we're going to see improved maternal outcomes. We're going to see improved healthcare for women.
Ah.
So that's our invitation at this moment in time. If
Ah.
people want to get involved, we just really pray that um, you encourage your pregnancy center to consider a conversion, an upgrade, and expansion of services, or that you just contact us about supporting our mission as we are. It's a pretty big proposal, but it has
Yeah.
tremendous benefits.
Mm.
So that's really, yeah,
Ah.
find us online, I guess,
Ugh.
guidingstarproject.com.
I think that that's such an important aspect to hit on, is like right now the opportunity, and that the Lord has laid this foundational years for you and your organization to then be able to meet these needs. And I think a lot of the attack has been, but we're not actually helping. We've changed the law, but we're not actually helping in the pro-life movement. And like all we
Yeah,
care about is this title of like
yeah,
make it illegal, but we don't actually support how we're going to get there. And I think it is this education. It is women understanding their bodies. It is supporting women through their pregnancies. It is the what to do in a unplanned pregnancy and what are the resources and how do I feel supported through that process of unknown and lack of control, which we desire so much again.
Just keep coming back to that. We just want to control.
Just come back to that. Back to that control. There's a theme there. And is it control of women? Is it control of my life? Both and maybe that has fed this culture.
It is definitely a power sort of, we feel powerful. We feel godlike when we can control things, but reality is we're not God. And when we can just, relinquish that and say, I trust you, Lord. I trust that it was made properly. I trust, that you don't do anything by mistake. That's when things fall back into right order. That's when natural law balances out and we see people that are truly happy and whole.
And that gift of one of the feminine genius gifts is receptivity, to receive rather than to control. And so I think the reality that when we are receiving those gifts that we don't even always see as a gift, that there is something there for us that helps grow. And so thank you. And I definitely will also link your book as well as the Happy Girls Guide to Being Whole down below for all of our viewers, because they are such good resources, especially right now. And the links to the Guiding Star Project will also be below in the description. Oh, thank you, Leah. Thank you for all.
This has been really fun.
You are doing.
This is just a good girl conversation. I love getting
I know. It's just a good conversation about how the Lord has brought us here. Through campus ministry and how much I needed these resources. And so I definitely see the need in the market, how much I still need them today at times, to change that mind thought process. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And God bless.